Hello, Jessica Amir here for the Finance News Network. Joining me over the phone from Noxopharm is Managing Director and CEO, Dr. Graham Kelly. Hi, Graham. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jessica.
Graham, recently you spoke about the company's NOX 66 clinical program. Can you tell us now about what's happening in the background with your research and development program?
The fact that NOX 66 is in clinical trials doesn't mean that the research and development, or R&D, as it's called, actually stops. In fact, it's quite the opposite. That's when the R&D program really has to be ramped up, because there is so much behind-the-scenes work that goes into getting a drug onto the market. And I'll give you some examples, starting with a couple of very practical things. If we look at the manufacture of NOX 66, we want to be producing clinical-grade material on a medium-scale basis by the end of this year, 2018. Because if the opportunity comes along, we need to be able to provide commercial quantities of the drug at relatively short notice. And manufacturing lead times can be very long, and that means lost opportunity and loss of potential revenue if you aren't ready. So all this means that we need to show by the end of this year that we can manufacture NOX 66 to a standard which is acceptable by regulators in different parts of the world. Now, this is all progressing as planned, but it still is a major behind-the-scenes program, which is R&D in every sense of the term. And on top of this, there are all the various preclinical safety studies that all the rules and regulations stipulate must be done. And then all that data then feeds into the monumental amount of paperwork that goes into your application for marketing approval. Again, all very boring behind-the-scenes activity, but certainly vital. And on top of this, we're also trying to get a better understanding of how NOX 66 works to enhance radiotherapy, and in particular, how it might induce the abscopal response that Noxopharm talks about. Now, some of the most commonly used anti-cancer drugs that have been around for 40 years or so are still being looked at to see how they work. So that you don't need to know how a drug works before it can be put on the market. The important thing is to be able to show that a new drug actually works and that it can be well tolerated. But knowing how it works certainly helps market the drug once it's on the market. So for that reason, and for the fact that radio enhancing is new, there are no radio enhancers on the market, we need to drill down into the actions of NOX 66. And right now we have a number of preclinical collaborations with researchers around the world that are doing that. They're looking at how NOX 66 is interacting with both radiotherapy and the body's immune system. And it's interesting that this is taking us into whole new frontiers of medicine that I have little doubt ultimately will revolutionise how we see the body's response to diseases such as cancer.
And Graham, most drug development companies have a pipeline of drugs. Is that what your R&D program is really doing? And also, are you looking for more drugs to come up behind NOX 66?
No, not really. Noxopharm is involved in oncology drug discovery and drug development. So we're certainly open for business and always ready to look for more opportunities which could create more value for shareholders. But the reality is that currently we have a full book of work. Some potential opportunities outside the cancer field fell into our lap about a year ago, but we dealt with those by creating our US subsidiary company, Nirada. So our pipeline lies in the different ways to use NOX 66, not in looking for new drugs. And for example, our current clinical program, as we've already discussed in the two previous interviews, is looking at using NOX 66 in three completely different ways. There's, first of all, the use of NOX 66 in combination with two different forms of radiotherapy, and then the third way is using it in combination with chemotherapy. Now, that's three quite separate clinical development strategies, and in effect, that's equivalent to running three different drug programs. But leaving that aside, just in terms of pure R&D, we do have two other current R&D programs that I'd just like to touch on now. The first of these is using NOX66 to treat brain cancer. And this program is based on the discovery from animal studies where we found that we can get NOX66 into the brain in very significant quantities. So now we are now exploiting that discovery to see if we can potentially use NOX66 to make radiotherapy a more effective treatment of human brain cancer. Chemotherapy is poorly effective in most cases of brain cancer, and generally where it does work, it only provides short-term benefit at best. So surgery and radiotherapy remain really the best treatment options. In the case of radiotherapy, the brain is very sensitive to radiation, and that means that the dose of radiation that you can use really needs to be quite limited. So what we are hoping to do is to work within that dosing limitation, but to use NOX66 to enhance the cancer killing effect of the radiotherapy without affecting healthy brain tissue. Now, in this program, we're focusing on a brain cancer called glioblastoma multiforme, or GBM, and that's the main form of primary brain cancer in adults. And then also another one called DIPG, which is a highly aggressive form of brain cancer in children. Now, this program currently is still in the laboratory, and will be it'll be at least another year before we're ready to go into the clinic with this approach. The other pure R&D pipeline program is happening via our Hong Kong-based NOX Asia subsidiary. Now, like the brain cancer program, this is a preclinical program, meaning that it's still in the laboratory. And it's focused on using NOX66 with radiotherapy to treat certain cancers that are common in Asian communities. The two we're focusing on are nasopharyngeal cancer and gastric carcinoma. Now, nasopharyngeal cancer is a rare form of head and neck cancer that is associated with a virus called the Epstein-Barr virus, and this virus is endemic in East Asia and certain parts of Africa. Gastric carcinoma affects the stomach, and it's thought to be associated with the bacterial Helicobacter infection that causes gastric ulcers. And this was the discovery made by a couple of Australian scientists so many years ago, for which they got the Nobel Prize. Now, both cancers are rare in Australia and other Western countries, but they are very prominent in East Asia, with China in particular. What we're looking to do is to make these cancers respond better to therapy, and at the moment there is very, very poor response to radiotherapy and chemotherapy. So we are looking in the laboratory to see at the moment whether we can make both cancers respond better to NOX66 and radiotherapy. And we're currently working with researchers at hospitals in Hong Kong and China on this program. And to put into perspective what this is aiming to achieve, 3 years ago, the estimated number of people in China with these two forms of cancer were 60,000 for nasopharyngeal cancer and 680,000 for gastric carcinoma. So you can see that this is a huge problem that needs a solution. I mean, those two tumours alone tend to dwarf most other cancers in Western countries.
Thanks, Graham. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, not really, other than just to reinforce the fact that Noxopharm is a group of companies that include its, first of all, its majority-owned US subsidiary Nirata, as well as the wholly owned Hong Kong subsidiary Noxopharm Asia. And this group as a whole covers a broad spread of drug development programs across fields of oncology, neurosciences, inflammatory diseases, and cardiovascular disease. And in each case, we've got programs dealing with major community health issues of high unmet need where we believe we possibly have first-in-class drugs with something to offer.
Dr. Graham Kelly, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you, Jessica, for that.